All right, welcome back to my The Thrill of the Chase. Search for Forrest Fenn. It's gold. My name is Paul, and this is my Wanderlust. Search for Forrest Fenn's gold. So today, I just wanted to hit on some things. And what I'm going to do is, I think I may just go straight to that instead of like rambling through a bunch of things. But then I decided maybe I'll ramble through some stuff. So here we are. It's September 30th, last day of the month, and we're on the basically the eve of the first day of October. Weather's definitely starting to change. I'm sure there's some people out there, some diehards, and searching for the treasure. I definitely could see how, like, if you lived in the Arizona, or in the Arizona area or the New Mexico area, even maybe like if you were in like Denver, that you could like head south. Still, the weather, maybe I don't know, Denver. Yeah, you could. You could head down to the New Mexico area. I think I just saw there was a football game the other day, and it was 87 degrees in Phoenix. So it's got to be still pretty nice at Albuquerque and Santa Fe. I've got to have somewhat decent temperatures to go run around out there. But up here in the Pacific Northwest, we're going to be 40 overnight, and we're just getting down. We're getting down and dirty and low uh, into the wintry weather. So, and for me, the I put away all my stuff. I mean, it's all been packed away for my camping gear, and everything's been all put away, and my season's done. And then I go into that mode of of sort of this circle of maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done that, or and then but you start thinking, all right, well, am I going to give up on this whole thing? Of course not. But I mean, there's a whole winter, a whole autumn, winter, and spring to speculate ad nauseum about where does warm waters halt, and look at the big picture. So I heard some of the people talking, and sometimes I want to respond to these things, like when I listen to them. But I think this thing about categorizing Forrest Fenn as an outdoorsman from Texas, and that he's into fishing, and he is. He's into outdoors. He's into mountains, and I've read the bios. I have. I've read the bios. I get it. As a kid, his father took uh, his dad took the family to the Yellowstone area, and they had the hotel with the cabins. And Forrest Fenn he at a very early age, acting as a fishing guide. He was very proficient at fishing, and he knew his way around the Yellowstone greater area. And that's the extent of the details I know. Is that you know I believe it was around the West Yellowstone area and Hedgegan Lake area. And I think a lot of those stories in The Thrill of the Chase and Too Far to Walk, you see anecdotal stories about that. Now, the part that I find, um, you know, that's the thing that comes to mind, like right off the top, that I've thought about again and again, is The Thrill of the Chase. It's a memoir, and so it's not a child fantasy book. It's a set of memoirs. Now he doesn't say that the memoirs, the thrill of the chase. He doesn't categorically say that they're a summary of my youth in Yellowstone, or he doesn't say the thrill of the chase. A set of memoirs that summarize my childhood experiences in the greater Yellowstone area. No, he doesn't say that. Now, we know there's other parts of his life, but he definitely wants to share with us, he does share with us this part of his life, these childhood parts of his life. And when I look at my own life, when I look at probably some of the most fundamental aspects of your life, when you're younger, definitely when you're less than 16 or less than 18 years old, at those ages around, and that Forrest Fenn tells some of these stories about his time spent in the Yellowstone area. I mean, those are definitely very magical parts of your life. I mean, for me, when I think about when I was a kid, I mean, a summer was like 5 years. I mean, 8 years, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, those ages, time is definitely like more spread out. I think your notion of time. I mean, I remember as a kid that I was so worried about not having enough time in the day to do everything that I had this thing where I would get up at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning, and I mean, I went through this phase where I would like lay out all the toys and the things that I wanted to do in the day, and I got caught once by my mom. I mean, it's like 4:30 in the morning. She's like, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to miss a moment of the day. There's so much things that I need to get done here today, you know." And those things were all like kids things, right? Like I got to go see my friend down the street and trade these baseball cards, and I had a whole agenda around. I got to climb that tree in the backyard. That's the tree that I climb all the time. And those are important things to you. I think that I can imagine also that the time, the epic, the period of time that Forrest Fenn is talking about in the Yellowstone area, it definitely is a different world from today. I mean, he. It sounds like he had a tremendous amount of, his parents trusted him, and I think that was very, very common in other periods of time where young people, parents had kids, and I mean, once the kid was maybe like 5 or 6 years old, seven, maybe even earlier. I mean, children were taught were people had children to do chores, to cut the chicken's head off, pluck the chicken, clean the guts out of it, go fetch the water, and do chores and do labor and work. And I know that sounds like a harsh reality, but I mean, if you children were more considered, I don't know how to put it, but there was definitely a sense of children were given far more independence and expected to take on roles quicker in life. And those roles, and I think if you listen to Forrest Fenn's story, I mean, one of those roles was that whether that was a role that his parents had projected on him or he had just taken up, but I mean, that he talks about that he did the fishing trips, and when he did the fishing trips, he had certain jobs that he did. And I do not have the book. This is all just from anecdotal information that I've seen on the internet, and I could be wrong. I'm sure I get corrected on that. And I don't want to go into excruciating detail about that and like sit there and say, well, on page 14, he said this. But I get it. I mean, he had this he had this experience in the Yellowstone area, fishing and doing this kind of hunting lifestyle, and also another thing too is that life was a lot simpler in that period, in those periods of time, which I believe were like, I think he was talking about the 1950s, early 60s. To do the math, if he's 80, 50s, 60s. So even then, America was still a smaller. There were less people in America, that's for sure. The population was less, and the road systems were not as built up and as they are today, extensively. So, what am I getting at? I'm getting at that, you know, we Forrest Fenn has painted this picture, and I think he wants to share with people, I mean, these experiences of his youth, because I think they were magical moments. I think they were things where it may have shaped his dare I say, it may have shaped his imagination. And that's important because if I think about my youth, where I grew up was actually kind of a magical place too, and my parents were of that fabric also of, and it was a different time um, in the 1970s where I grew up in a semi-rural neighborhood or area. It was very rural, and it was common for my mother to, you know, feed me lunch, put a jacket on me, shoes, and shove me out the door and lock the door behind me and say, "Don't come back till dinner time," and and there was 800 miles of open wildland all the way to the Canadian border and more headed north, and a lot of places you get into trouble: rivers, streams, mountains, rocks, uh, canyons, valleys, all that kind of stuff. Wild animals, large trees, things you could get hurt and play in, and I did. And in those experiences of that kind of freedom, of being able to like run around, scrape your knee, stick your finger in, uh, you know, in the sap of a tree and get it all over your clothes, and then it's sticky, and you're trying to figure it out, and then you touch something else, and then you got a pine needle stuck to your hand, and just those kind of things, or playing with a hornet's nest that's in the ground and discovering that they bite, and you get stung by them. I mean, those were experiences I had that went on and on and on, and those experiences definitely shaped my imagination and my view of as I've grown up, and they've been with me all my life. And I think that that is true. That when you want to think about the man, which is Forrest Fenn, I think it's he's given us this painting. He's giving us these broad strokes of he's showing you giving his experiences in life. And I think like the thing about I don't have the book, but I've read the story about how he would take the bathtub in a pan or something and the water would boil, and then you have to, I think that was common back then, and even more common further back in history, that you took a bath like that. It was you'd have this tub, and it was a public affair. I mean, you didn't have a bathroom or a door to hide behind. I mean, you just got naked and got in this tub with a bar of soap and a kettle of hot water, and you did your thing in there, washed up. And so, what does that mean? I think that means that I think Forrest Fenn is showing you his where the source of his imagination comes from. I don't think that it's, and I think there's plenty of information in there to get a perspective of what his imagination, where his perspective of his imagination comes from. I think, boy, I could have put that in the very beginning, and his perspective of his imagination, comes from these experiences from his youth, and he's telling you that categorically. Um, Now, the interesting thing is that it wasn't a 13-year-old boy who hid the treasure, and I think somebody makes that point, is um, that it was an allegedly 79, 80-year-old man, or wherever he did it, because there's like a 3 to 6 year discrepancy whether he really did it when he was 79 or he did it when he was 73. You know, I have a working idea about all of that, but the point is that if we believe that, and I guess I will, I'll take it on face value, that a 79-year-old man hid the treasure, it wasn't a 13-year-old boy. So, and it was the imagination of a 79-year-old man who wrote the book, The Thrill of a Chase. Okay, so that I'm going to leave that, um, and I think that's important. Is that when you think about the imagination of Forrest Fenn, you better think of all the information that he's given you, and you have to see the perspective of, and I'm not sure it was 1955 or 1962 when he was there in the Yellowstone Park area with his family doing the fishing guide stuff, is from that perspective of that world, of that genre, of the music and time of that period. Um, but then you have all the other things that happened to him, um, So I'm gonna end this and upload this one, and then right behind this, because it's been driving me crazy, I am going to do this thing, the next video, where I am going to dump a solve that I've had for a long time. It's a wacky solve, but a solve nonetheless. And so it actually may take me two parts to do that because it's got a lot, and I tend to ramble on about stuff. So like my videos, subscribe, and I'll be back soon. I think. No, I'll be back with another video. So thanks for watching.